Hi, this is the Philosophical Angle program, and I am your host, Chris Angle. I am the author of 4 books on philosophy, one of which is the Philosophical Equations of Economics. And if you like to contact us and make comment on the program, you can either do that below or you can give us an email at contact@thephilosophicalAngle.com. And the purpose of the philosophical angle is to examine the nature of concepts and ideas in current media. And with that said, we're going to talk about something that kind of occurs almost every day in the media, and the difference between the left and the right. But in this episode, we're going to talk about the difference between the left and the right, and why some people become liberals and why some people become conservatives. So, let's start. It's going to be an interesting program, so stick with it. I think you're going to enjoy it. So first, when we have to consider the difference, in order to understand why some people become liberal and leftist and Democrats, and why some become Republicans, conservatives, and on the right, and you have to consider that way back when the first political party was evolved, it evolved from 2 segments of society. One, the haves, and the other segment of society, the have-nots. And this goes all the way back from when we were maybe in a tribal situation, when you get the ascendancy of a leader. And as society develops and becomes more populous, the number of people increase, and the leader becomes a king, and the king has a queen, and so the kings and queens control society, and below them are the workers, the serfs, the proletariat, the slaves. And then eventually, from the kings and queens and their noble, will develop a nobles class. So these workers, these have-nots, being the workers, the serfs, they seek the first dictum of political thought. And there are 5 dictums of political thought. One for the left, one for the right. They're similar in almost all respects, but they're identical in the first 2. And the dictum number 1 is the law of demand for the good. All life demands and seeks that which is good for it, and continually seeks that which is good for it. And dictum number 2 is St. Augustine's principle of libido dominandi, and that is the will to dominate. And that's why within the human species there comes a leader. There is somebody who rises to the top. There is a king. There is a queen. There is a leader, an elder. So there's always a hierarchy in the human species, along with other species, but particularly in the human species. And so that's dictum number 2 of life. And St. Augustine's principle is also present in comparative anthropological studies that confirm this idea, this principle that he came up with. Dictum number 3, the have-nots are inherently not good. So the haves always believe that the have-nots are inherently not good. You can see that when the kings and queens always look down at the very bottom of the class systems that they had, and they always referred to them as very low people. And you can even see it in today's terminology. Remnants of it are we heard in some political debates calling other people followers the deplorables. Okay, so and the dictum number 3 on the have-nots is that they believe that the haves and the have-nots are inherently good, that the human nature is good, and dictum number 3 for the haves, that the have-nots are inherently not good. This can also be backed up by Scripture. Everybody knows that human beings are fallible, and if we look in the Bible, we see that humans are sinful, and so the have-nots have look at the haves look at the have-nots as not being good people, not having a good nature. And then the dictum 4 is that the haves believe that they should provide for the have-nots. In the 19th century, that came out of the French Revolution, that the nobles came up with the fact that, or the belief that they should that the higher classes should take care of the lower classes, and with it was born socialism and the outlook of the left. And but on dictum number 4, on the conservative side, there is the duty of voluntary charity. This is instead of noblesse oblige. The have-nots believe that there's a duty to voluntary charity. In other words, we should help each other. And dictum number 5, it's the Lord Acton principle. That will not be in play today. And on the right side, on the have-not side, it's that it's the philosophical angle principle that absolute freedom begets ethicalities absolutely, instead of absolute power corrupts absolutely. But we will not be discussing dictum today, 5 so much today. So we go back to the serfs, and they seek the first dictum of life, as we spoke about. And when these individuals of society strive for goodness, when anybody strives for goodness, they're at peace because they're fulfilling their objective of trying to strive for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so they and in doing so, they just seek that they be fairly treated and be equally before the law of society. And so now the left comes from the haves, from the king. They've evolved that this political their politics have come up from being the kings, the queens, and the nobles, and then as society grows, they become the nobles and their associates, and the associates are a cadre of facilitators for the haves. In other words, as society grows, the king and queen and the nobles are not able to administer to the society as it becomes more complicated, and so they need a group of associates, which I call the facilitators, and they're nothing else but government bureaucrats that administer the policies coming out of the very top of the political top, and the control is needed by the government and their associates and their facilitators, and the control is anti-cooperation. And the haves can be controlling because they believe that the nature of the serfs is that they're inherently bad, which is dictum number 3. And so they must have control because these are inherently bad people. And so the facilitators control the have-nots through motivation and through negative knowledge plus force. Negative knowledge plus force is really cooperation. Is really the essence of control, and motivation is an example of the motivation is giving out welfare funds to do nothing in exchange for your vote and loyalty. And the have-nots will think that they are providing and should provide a social network, and as we said previously, that's one of their dictums, and which is of course noblesse oblige, dictum number 4. And a good example of these of the societies that have evolved from the idea of noblesse oblige, that the government should take care of the lower classes of societies, are communists, fascists, socialists, and the kings and queens of old, and their royalty. And the control of the have-nots will tend to get worse and more oppressive over time. And that's because of dictum 5, which is the Lord Actum principle that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And you can just see how the kings of old have treated the common man to see that this principle corrupts the minds, and it happens because they don't have to cooperate. And if you don't have to cooperate, you forget that your ethicalities to those that are below you. And there are some who do not submit to the control of the haves, and they don't want to be in serfdom anymore. They don't want to be slaves. They don't want to be the worker bees, the proletariats. And so what happens is that these have-nots want to break out of the social dictum, the social network of serfdom. And they want to do that because of dictum 1, the very first dictum, that all life seeks that which is good for them. So they want to break out of being a slavery and just giving up everything to the kings and queens, and through taxation or whatever, or tribute. And it'll be thought and considered by the haves that these non-cooperative serfs and proletariats that break out from their serf class, that adhere to individual rights. These are basically bad people, and so that's their attitude. The haves' attitude toward the lower classes. But as we said, life wants to pursue goodness for itself and its offspring, and it wants to pursue, to a lesser degree, goodness for society as a whole, and for all those whom we cooperate. And life seeks goodness by making sacrifices to receive a reward. And so everything a person does in his life is a sacrifice to receive a reward. And we struggle and strive and we can actually to make these sacrifices to get something which is good for you, and to bring it into our lives, and we can make an equation of this that produces and this equation is that the sacrifice, which is made up of the components of risk, information, knowledge, time, energy, and if it's a product as opposed to a service, then we have to add in material to the constituent variables. And so we can actually write a little equation of sacrifice equals reward. And within these constituent variables, most of the improvements come through information and knowledge variable, which improves the sacrifice and improves the reward. And so all of the as society progresses, we pretty much struggle and with all our effort all throughout our lives. There's not much room for even more effort, and there's not much, and our days are filled with effort. And so the real proponent, the variable here is the information knowledge variable, and that comes and now in society a great deal, and that produces all the creativity and the new products, and the reason why economics, the economies get better is from the efficiencies that are produced by the knowledge that humans produce. And so the left tends to suppress the accumulation of knowledge with its production of anti-knowledge. And these are rules and regulations that they place on society, and coming out of their will to add control over the have-nots. But the have-nots nevertheless acquire more and more knowledge, and they start to produce efficiencies, and they go up into the class of the middle class, and the upper class even, when they become very successful. and they become part of the nouveau riche class, and the have-nots tend to become conservatives because in the production of the rewards of in production in getting a reward from your sacrifice, cooperation is needed, especially when you form companies and you have to cooperate with other people, and you do this in order to produce better goodness, because people cooperate because they realize that in cooperating they can produce more together than they can as an individual. And as a result, cooperation increases, and the have-nots believe and trust in the goodness of others because this is a natural outcome of greater cooperation. And cooperation equals knowledge of the efficiency of the new combined sacrifice, which will produce a new reward. And cooperation is possible by the effusion of respect. And this is very important in the next sentence. And the appropriate dispensation of respect is the essence of ethics. And we respect others in order to cooperate. And we cooperate in order to produce goods and services, which brings us up away from misery, which is the nature of that which is good, and which is the nature of all that is ethical. In other words, if you are respectful of something, then you are ethical in your behavior to that something. Therefore, this increasing amount of cooperation produces greater goodness in the conservative base. And an example of this is why the South switched over to being Republican. They were an agrarian society, and eventually they became a producing high knowledge-based economy, and they've gone over to being to being Republican. However, the Democratic Party does not grow naturally when knowledge is increased. However, they still retain its base, which seems to be about 30% of the voting populace, and also that's about even what of the have-nots too. They're about 30%, I believe, and 30% of the haves, and so the other 40% tend to be independents in society, political independence. So in the serf class breakout, there are some that break out to go to the middle class through the gain of knowledge, but they do not stay in the party of the have-nots. That is the Republicans. They will stay with the haves on the left side. They will stay with the Democratic Party. So why? Well, it's for two reasons. Or should I say, it's because of two principles of political philosophy. And it is because of dictum number 3, that others are not good, and their nature needs to be, and they need to be controlled because their nature is not good. And secondly, the haves believe that in dictum number 4, which is that there needs to be a social net, and as such, people need to be controlled and provided for. And this comes out of the noblesse oblige. And so the combination that others are not good and that there needs to be a social net for those for the lower classes. They need to be provided for. And so there needs to be a social net, and it should be provided by the king and the queen, the nobles, the facilitators, the government bureaucrats. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this, but the origin of dictum number 4, the noblesse oblige, comes out of the French Revolution, I believe, because they found that if you don't pay any attention and you keep your base down too downtrodden, they're going to rise up and cut your head off. So that was a pragmatic philosophy that came out in the 1800s. So the kings and queens and nobles and the government officials now believe it is their obligation to take care of society. In other words, government has the sole obligation to provide for the lower classes, and it must be the government that incurs the liability of the obligation of the establishment of the social net for the lower classes. And so, and it has to be the government because the people of society, especially the people of the right, are not of good character, and these people cannot be trusted to do this, to give charity, and because remember, dictum number 4, there is a voluntary duty of charity on the conservative side of the ledger here, the political ledger, and the left, though, does not believe that the people can be trusted because of their bad nature, and so they might not, because of their bad nature, enact the charity that they espouse, because, after all, that charity is voluntary. And so the liberals, due to their nature, to their dicta 3 and 4, which would prevent them from allowing or trusting the conservatives to establish the social network by themselves, the liberal or progressive believes that this obligation of the nobles must be enacted by the nobles, and only by the nobles, for the or that is, by the government, for the benefit of the lower class and through their facilitatory class. And so that is why some people do not graduate and go into the conservative class, but stay with their democratic beliefs because of dicta 3 and 4 and their belief that others are bad and they cannot be trusted to voluntarily take care of the poor in society. Thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time.